Well, hello and welcome to Sunday Morning Coffee with Dr. Childress here. So today I'm going to be talking about the situation in the family courts and the solution to the situation in the family courts. And the solution involves switching around from custody to treatment. We have a problem in the family courts and we need to fix the family problem in the courts. So, to begin with, to describe the situation, foundationally, the the situation is that forensic custody evaluations, which have been conducted in the family courts for the last 40 years, represent a failed experiment in service delivery to a vulnerable population. 40 years of failure resulted in the destruction of thousands and thousands of lives. So here's from an independent review from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission on Forensic Custody Evaluations. And they found by an 11-9 margin that a majority of the commission members favor elimination of forensic custody evaluations entirely, arguing that these reports are biased and harmful to children and lack scientific and or legal value. At worst, evaluations can be dangerous, particularly in situations of domestic violence or child abuse. And so I want to emphasize this point that the forensic custody evaluations that are currently being conducted in the family courts are harmful to children, dangerous, and lack scientific or legal value from independent review from the New York Blue Ribbon Commission. And I recommend that everyone go to hear further discussion of the Blue Ribbon Commission findings from two of the commissioners. You can Google it, the discussion of New York Blue Ribbon Commission report, and YouTube will come up where a couple of the commissioners discuss the findings regarding forensic custody evaluations. Now, this is for parents. I think it's helpful to orient that you do not want a forensic custody evaluation, but it's also equally and more valuable for the legal professionals to recognize what the problems over here on the forensic custody evaluations are. That that these are the two, I think two attorneys who are commissioners discussing a lot of the problems with forensic custody evaluations from a legal perspective as well as from just an accuracy perspective on things. So what that does, though, when you have an entire field of forensic psychology that's been dominant and doing what they do in the family courts, and they are awful, then there's no appropriate or competent mental health services in the family courts, which is the current situation. We don't have competent mental health services in the family courts. So what needs to happen is we need to switch back to clinical psychology. We need to get clinical psychology back in the family courts. If we're going to eliminate forensic custody evaluations, we need to get clinical psychology back. Otherwise, there's no mental health services in the family courts. So clinical psychology is treatment, not custody. And we went on the wrong path early on when we got these forensic custody evaluators, and they just started making up their own stuff, got us on the wrong path. The healthcare system deals with pathology. The legal system deals with crimes. The narcissistic, borderline, dark personality parent drives the pathology into the wrong system for a solution. They drive it into the legal system, making it about custody when it's not a custody issue, it's a pathology issue. There's some sort of problem in the family relationships. There's a pathology in the family. It needs to be in the healthcare system, not the legal system. And that's a manipulative thing by the narcissistic borderline parent to drive it into the legal system, make it the wrong system because it's impossible to get a solution to a pathology from the wrong system, from the legal system. So no matter what solution is provided by the legal system, it's going to be a wrong solution for pathology. Does that make sense? It's like driving a legal problem into the healthcare system and asking doctors to make decisions about contract law or something. You're going to get bad decisions from the doctors because it's a wrong system to handle legal issues. We need to get the proper system to handle the proper issue. Courts decide on custody. Doctors should not be deciding on custody. In the absence of child abuse, parents have the right to parent according to their cultural values, personal values, religious values. In the absence of child abuse, each parent should have as much time and involvement with the child as possible. And in the absence of child abuse, to restrict either parent's time and involvement with their child is going to damage that child's attachment bond to that parent, thereby harming the child and harming the parent. Doctors do no harm. So doctors need to stay away from custody decisions. If there's no child abuse, doctors don't have an opinion. Fix whatever problem there is, but if there's no child abuse, each parent should have as much time and involvement with the child as possible. The question for the doctors is there child abuse? And that's the important, relevant question in the family courts that the doctors are not giving it any answer to. And we need to start giving the courts that answer because we need a treatment plan for one thing or the other. So that's the issue here. When the pathological parent puts it in the legal system, because that's not the system to solve it. It takes huge delays, it's expensive, and there's no treatment. Judges don't diagnose pathology. Judges don't treat pathology. So what's it doing in the legal system? We got to get this back out to the healthcare system. So the system or the solution from clinical psychology. So as I come back, I'm bringing clinical psychology back. Here's the situation. You need treatment. Okay, so you need to fix the problem. You need treatment to fix the problem. You have a problem, the pathology in the family, you have a problem. You need to fix the problem. You need to fix the pathology in the family. In this case, it's an attachment pathology. It's a problem in love and bonding. So you have a problem in the family, love and bonding. You need to fix that problem. For that, you will need a treatment plan to fix the problem, to fix the pathology. Now, this is true throughout all of healthcare, including clinical psychology, which is embedded in healthcare. So you have a problem, pathology in your family, you're going to need a treatment plan to fix the problem. And for a treatment plan, you will need a diagnosis because diagnosis guides treatment. The treatment for cancer is different than the treatment for diabetes. So we need a diagnosis to know what the treatment is going to be. The treatment for child abuse by the targeted parent is way different than the treatment for child abuse by the allied parent. In one case, we protect the child from one parent. In the other case, we protect the child from the other parent. We need to know which parent we are protecting the child from. So we need to know what is the diagnosis that's guiding our treatment plan. Are we treating cancer or diabetes? Okay, that's healthcare. You got a problem. We need a treatment plan to fix your problem. For the treatment plan, we're going to need a diagnosis about what's causing your problem so we know what we're going to do to fix your problem. So, the situation in the family courts from clinical psychology, this is a situation. It's a differential diagnosis. So we have two possible diagnostic considerations here. The first is that the targeted parent is abusing the child in some way, thereby creating the child's attachment pathology towards that parent. Because let me explain a little something about attachment pathology here. The attachment system is a motivational system, which means it always has a direction. Okay. It's not like a regulatory system goes up and down. Motivational systems, attachment, eating, pain, pleasure, sex, all the motivational systems have a direction towards them. And the attachment system always motivates towards bonding to the parent, because the other motivational direction is death by starvation and predation. So, over millions of years of evolution, a very strong motivational system developed to bond to the parent, motivates the child. So, when we have a child who is rejecting a parent, who's switched and is trying to escape from a parent, that's what causes that. That's child abuse by that parent. So just the child's symptoms alone will make an accusation against the targeted parent of some sort of abusive range parenting. Now that parent says that's not true. Well, then we got a factitious disorder. So now we got both parents that are alleging some sort of child abuse on the child. And so we need to decide, on this. If we got a directional change in the child's bonding motivation, so they're trying to escape a parent and flee into a predator, then we're looking at child abuse range parenting. Either the targeted parent is abusing the child, creating an authentic attachment pathology, child abuse creating the pathology, or the allied parent is psychologically abusing the child by creating a factitious attachment pathology in the child and a shared induced persecutory delusion for secondary gain to the allied parent. Okay. And so the targeted parent is abusive, is what the child's symptoms and the allied parent, protective parent role is alleging, that there's some sort of abusive range parenting by the targeted parent. Now that parent says that's not true. Well, I got a factitious disorder being alleged by the targeted parent. They say, "Oh my gosh, I'm not, malevolently treating the child in some way." Okay, well, you're then saying that's kind of delusional. That we got a persecutory delusion in the child and shared with the other parent. So there's my differential diagnosis. Which one is it? I don't know yet. I got two people making allegations, each against the other. So here is the DSM-5 differential diagnosis out of clinical psychology for the courts, legal people, parents, everybody. This is the DSM-5 differential diagnosis from clinical psychology relative to what's going on in the family courts. Either the targeted parent is abusive, in which case is it child physical abuse, is it child sexual abuse, is it child neglect, or is it child psychological abuse? We need an answer to one of those. If the targeted parent is abusive, what's the abuse? If the targeted parent is not abusive, then the other is, what is the allied parent abusive? And that the DSM diagnosis there would be the delusional disorder, shared persecutory type, a factitious disorder imposed on another, a factitious attachment pathology for secondary gain. The secondary gain, by the way, pull this up. The secondary gain to the allied parent, there's like three primary ones. The first is manipulating the court's decisions on child custody. So you got dark personalities, Machiavellian manipulation. Guess what? They're manipulating the court's decisions by producing pathology in the child, a factitious attachment pathology to manipulate the courts. So factitious disorder imposed on another. The second secondary gain or reward to that parent from doing that is spousal abuse of the targeted parent, using the child as a weapon and the child's induced symptoms as a weapon of spousal abuse. So that's your second secondary gain or reward. The third is to meet that parent's own emotional and psychological needs. So for the narcissistic parent, it's to be seen as the all wonderful parent, and you're the bad parent, but I'm the perfect, wonderful parent. And for the borderline, it's the abandonment fears, to hold on to the child and use the child as a regulatory object in that way. So we have three domains of potential secondary gain relative to producing false attachment pathology. So is it true attachment pathology, or is it false attachment pathology being produced for secondary gain to a narcissistic borderline dark personality parent? So the situation from the legal system. Now, if we switch systems now, so right there, previously, I've been talking about the clinical psychology coming into the family courts and what we see as a clinical psychologist coming into your pathology, your problem in the family courts. Now, from the legal system, here's the situation relative to the pathology that we have is there are two litigants in the legal system. And the legal system is an adversarial system. And each litigant parent is making child abuse and spousal abuse allegations against the other parent. Okay, so we got two litigants. Both of them are making allegations of child abuse. The allied parents' allegations are that the child's symptoms and the allied parent are making either direct or indirect accusations that the targeted parent is abusing the child in some way. Meanwhile, the targeted parent, that parent is asserting that the allegations are false, delusion, and that the child's symptoms are factitious, false, artificially created symptoms. Now, the parent, the targeted parent, may not say, my child's delusional or my child has a fictitious disorder imposed on another, because they're not a psychologist. They're just a normal human coming, they're getting a divorce. They never expected anything. Now, here's important thing for doctors and judges and attorneys, but the doctors to understand, the patient should never have to explain the pathology to the doctor. Okay, the doctor should already know. So if the patient comes in with any domain, like saying, no, I'm not abusing my child, then they are saying it is a factitious disorder, that the attachment pathology is a false disorder. If they say, no, I'm not abusing my child, they are saying the child has a false belief, a fixed and false belief that the child is being malevolently treated in some way. That's a delusion. That's a persecutory delusion. So they don't actually need to make those word allegations to the doctor. The doctor should know. And for this pathology in the family courts, all the doctors should anticipate our differential diagnosis, and the court and all attorneys should anticipate the differential diagnosis. If you're bringing clinical psychology into the family courts to fix the pathology in the family courts, we're going to bring a differential diagnosis. Which parent is abusing the child? Is it, 1, 2, 3, 4, physical, sexual neglect or psychological by the targeted parent? Or is it 1, 2, 3, 4, persecutory delusion, factitious disorder, child psychological abuse, spousal abuse by the allied parent? That's what clinical psychology is going to want to know. And guess what? That's exactly what the court wants to know as well. Is which parent's abusing the child? Is it a true thing or is it a false thing? What are we going to do about it? So here's the situation in the family courts. Okay. Now you see up at the top, we see with the treatment plan for child abuse. It's not a treatment plan for parental alienation. It's not a treatment plan for resist-refuse dynamic. It's not a treatment plan for parent-child contact problem, because those are all non-existent, made-up pathology labels. Stay grounded in the DSM-5 and actual pathology. Please, clinical psychologists, that's what we do. Forensic psychologists don't. But if you're going to bring clinical psychology back, then the doctors and the courts and parents and everybody involved needs to stay grounded in actual diagnoses. So we're going to get a treatment plan for child abuse. Now, but we're going to start more foundationally. So if you look down at the foundation down there, we have two litigants. Okay, litigant 1 is saying it's child abuse by the targeted parent. Litigant 2 is saying it's child abuse by the allied parent. So we got two allegations of child abuse from two litigants. So we need a clinical diagnostic assessment of child abuse to return an accurate diagnosis. This is really important, because if you believe a shared delusion, then you become part of the shared delusion. You become part of the pathology. And when the pathology is child psychological abuse, you become part of the psychological abuse of the child because you believe the shared delusion as if it was true. Okay. So, with this particular diagnosis, a shared persecutory delusion, if you misdiagnose the pathology, doctor, you will become a child abuser. Okay. And so that doesn't happen with any other pathology. It doesn't happen with autism, or, you misdiagnose autism, you're not a child abuser. You misdiagnose ADHD, you're not a child abuser. You misdiagnose this pathology, shared delusional disorder in the family courts, and you will be participating in the child abuse. So our diagnosis, it becomes really important. And we'll talk about that in a second. Okay, so we have to return an accurate diagnosis on the situation. And the decision of the court is going to have a tremendous impact on this child. So we need to get the court accurate information to reach a treatment plan to fix the child abuse. So and so each litigant, we need to do a clinical diagnostic assessment for both of those concerns, reach a diagnosis, and then goes into the court's decision making, and ultimately lands up in a treatment plan to fix the child abuse. We always fix things. That's clinical. So if you're bringing in clinical psychology in the family courts, we're going to wind up with a blue solution in treatment in the healthcare system, not a red solution in the legal system. So I understand that we're going for a healthcare solution, not a legal system solution. So now for the courts, we know, because they're adversarial systems, that it will be a disputed diagnosis. We know that for a fact. So one litigant or the other will dispute the diagnosis, especially when the diagnosis is child abuse. Oh my goodness. Once you return that diagnosis, the other parent's going to dispute that and say, no. The appellate system in healthcare for a disputed diagnosis is second opinion. We don't litigate a diagnosis for autism. If you dispute the diagnosis for autism, get a second opinion for that diagnosis. Okay. So we need to bring all the fighting around these children and these families to an end. So the appellate system for a disputed diagnosis is second opinion. Now, if we get an assessment diagnosis, then it's disputed, and we get a second assessment, then we dispute that. Now we got fighting doctors. That's called staff splitting, where the professionals start arguing and we're siding up around the patient. We need to bring the fighting to a close. So the solution to that from clinical psychology and all of healthcare is to get the second opinion simultaneously rather than sequentially. So that is the solution. Okay. So we have two litigants, start at the bottom down here. We have two litigants, each making allegations. So those allegations are going to go into a clinical diagnostic assessment. Now, because there are two litigants, each litigant should be allowed to appoint a second opinion consultant who can consult through telehealth on the primary clinician's clinical diagnostic assessment. Okay, that will then lead to the court's decisions and the treatment plan. That is the solution from clinical psychology. Okay, that's what we do. Second opinion consultation. And you talk about telehealth. Oh my gosh. Psychologists in clinical psychology observe ourselves all the time. We're the ones with the one-way mirrors, okay? We have rooms with one-way mirrors because we watch ourselves practice, okay? We do videotapes and supervised visitation. To become a psychologist, we have to do 2 full years of supervised treatment, supervised work. Okay, where somebody's kind of watching us and listening to us and doing stuff. Now, when I was doing it, we had cassette tapes and we'd be moving back and forth, or we just talk. Boy, nowadays, they're just actually watching people. I've watched people. I had a one-way mirror. I'd do in there, and my trainees would watch me, or I'd have a trainee in there, and I'd be doing on the one-way mirror. And if you go to a conference on therapists and you have the big kahuna therapist there, you know what they do? They bring out videotapes of their therapy to show what they're kind of doing with patient permissions, but they got videos because we watch each other all the time. There is zero problem with putting a couple of doctors together and letting us come up with what the answer is. Okay. And so this is a solution out of healthcare. Now, if people don't do it in the family courts, that's a different thing. But this is a solution out of healthcare. Is each party is allowed to appoint a second opinion consultant and who provides input into the clinical doc. And then those three reports, I probably should put three arrows there, but you're going to get three reports going into the court's decision making, and it winds up on the treatment plan. Okay, we have the internet now. We can use that. This is from the National Academy of Sciences. Clinicians may refer to or consult with other clinicians, formally or informally, to seek additional expertise about a patient's health problems. We do this all the time. This is what they're saying we should be doing to improve our diagnosis, which is what we want in the family court. The consult may help to confirm or reject the working diagnosis. So there it is. That's exact. National Institute of Sciences saying you want to improve the diagnosis. That's exactly what we do. We put second opinion consults in there to improve the working diagnosis and get an accurate diagnosis on it. Or may provide information on potential treatment options. So again, that's good information coming in. If a patient's health problem is outside the clinician's area of expertise, such as delusional thought disorders or factitious disorders or family systems, or narc personalities, if attachment pathology, if it's beyond the boundaries, the area of expertise, he or she can refer the patient to a clinician who holds more suitable expertise. Clinicians can also recommend that a patient seek a second opinion from another clinician to verify their impressions of an uncertain diagnosis, or if they believe that this would be helpful to the patient. You know how low that threshold is? If they believe it would be helpful to the patient, let's get you a second opinion on this. Okay, to improve the diagnosis, it's a questionable diagnosis. So, Your Honor, the legal system, judges, attorneys, this is what we need to do in the family courts. And attorneys, judges, people, you absolutely know that's true. Okay, we've got two litigants, both have rights. We need to get properly assessed to both litigants' concerns. There's going to be a disputed diagnosis, so let each litigant appoint their own second opinion. And let's get a diagnosis with confirming or dissenting second opinions. That's exactly what we do. Then we get those diagnoses and those treatment plans into the legal system. The court can make its decisions, and then we move into treatment. That's the solution. So, when possible child abuse is a considered diagnosis, which it is in the family courts, because both litigants are alleging child abuse by the other. So it's going to come back child abuse one way or the other. Okay. The returned diagnosis must be accurate 100% of the time. If we misdiagnose child abuse, the consequences are too devastating for the child. So our diagnosis must be accurate 100% of the time. How do we do that? Get second opinions on it. Get a third opinion on it if necessary. So in the legal system, we need to get a clinical diagnostic assessment, not a forensic custody evaluation. Number one, we need to get clinical psychology. We need to get treatment. We need to get a treatment healthcare solution, not a legal custody solution. So we need to get a diagnostic assessment to determine which parent is abusing the child. It's going to be a disputed diagnosis. We know that for a fact. So each party should be allowed to appoint a second opinion consultant in telehealth to consult on that opinion, that we then get that information into the court for its decision making. Okay. That's how we improve the diagnosis. That's how we get the court an accurate diagnosis for its decision making. So, to summarize, this is the situation. Okay. We need a treatment plan. We need a treatment plan for child abuse, and the court needs to make its decisions relative to custody and the child abuse concerns raised by the litigants. And this is coming out of the legal system, so the court has legitimate interest in getting the treatment plan, getting this fixed. So what the court's looking at is it has two litigants. Each litigant is making a child abuse and spousal abuse allegation against the other parent. Court judges are not authorized or licensed to make diagnoses. That's not the appropriate role for the court, nor does the court do treatment. And so the court does have parent patries over the child. It has an interest in that the child abuse and ends, and that we get effective treatment for the family. So the court, we need to request the parent. You will have, Your Honor, and this is stuff that's happening right now. Okay, this is my practice. Guess who's the second opinion consultant being appointed through telehealth? I've been on several cases appointed as the second opinion consultant on telehealth. So this is occurring right now. The litigant 2, okay, this child abuse by the allied parent, is introducing a request for orders that the family get a clinical diagnostic assessment to the appropriate differential diagnosis of concern. Which parent's abusing the child? So we're getting requests for these orders. And then they're also requesting the second opinion opportunities for both parents. And the court is granting that because it's both reasonable and appropriate, and it's healthcare, and it's the right thing to do to get an accurate diagnosis. So that is currently occurring. So the courts will be receiving these sorts of orders or requests for orders from the litigants. So that's the situation. The solution then is to add a second opinion through telehealth on the clinical diagnostic assessment. And that is fair and it's balanced and it addresses everybody's concerns. Then we get the confirmed diagnosis going into the court. The court can then make its decisions, and then we can move into the treatment plan for child abuse. Now, an additional advantage, wonderful advantage from doing that, is that you have a diagnostic assessment that's going to move into treatment. Well, if you add the second opinions on the diagnostic assessment through telehealth, they are then also available as second opinions on the treatment going forward, and they were there at the initial diagnostic assessment. So let's say we have like maybe an unclear diagnosis on that initial diagnostic assessment. We go into something called a response to intervention. We say, okay, we gotta get a little bit more clarity right now, so we're going to do a little treatment, 6-8 weeks of treatment with this. And if we have the right diagnosis, it's going to fix it. If we misdiagnosed it, it's not, and we'll switch over to the other diagnosis. That's called a response to intervention, RTI. So we're gonna do that. Potentially sometimes response to intervention. Contingent visitation schedule might be something like that. So if you have that situation, that the assessment's kind of being extended a little bit into the treatment phase, well, then you also have the two expert consultants always available to the treatment provider if they want to get a little extra consult to confirm or disconfirm a diagnosis. Okay, so that you see this right here? That is another reason healthcare, clinical psychology uses this treatment consultation second opinion approach. The National Academy of Sciences recommends it because it improves the quality of healthcare being delivered to the patients. So with that, I'm going to wrap up my Sunday coffee talk for you guys out there. This is currently occurring. What I just described to you here, those court orders for the second opinions, is currently occurring, and I am, you know, this parent is on, or the targeted parent, litigant two, is offering me as the telehealth second opinion on this situation, and I'm getting pointed now. The other side can get their, second opinion. We'll have a 3-doctor collaboration on this situation. Now, the other feature to recognize about this is we might have false allegations of parental alienation, false allegations um, of factitious disorder. So that litigant one there may be true. The litigant one, it's the other parent who's abusing the child, the targeted parent. And the targeted abusive parent says, I'm not abusing the child. It's parental alienation. It's not me abusing the child. They're distorting the child's beliefs. Okay. That's a total possibility. Okay. And that's the concern of litigant one over here. He says, wait a minute, I'm not alienating the child. That parent's actually abusive range. Well, you know what? With this, what would happen in this situation? In that situation relative to this? Well, if litigant one is actually the correct one, they're not. It is the other parent who's abused, and it's not parental alienation. It's not a delusional disorder. It's not a factitious disorder. And you know who they're going to appoint as their second opinion consultant? Probably me, because if I recognize delusional thought disorders and factitious disorders imposed on another, and it's real child abuse, and I've worked child abuse and everything, I'm the second opinion that they want to say, no, this is a false allegation of parental alienation. Okay. And you can look at it, you can look at my diagnostic checklist, and those symptoms won't be there. You won't have attachment suppression towards a normal range parent. The child won't be showing the narcissistic symptoms or phobic anxiety, and the child will not have a persecutory delusion. There will be a foundational ground to the child's belief that they are being malevolently treated in some way. There will be a reality base to that, because there is this child abuse by the other parent in some way. So, but then we need to identify the way. We need to put it on a treatment plan and fix it. Okay, one way or the other, we always wind up on the treatment plan. So this is the approach that will be coming, because it is the approach from clinical psychology. So as soon as you get rid of forensic custody evaluations and bring clinical psychology back, this is the approach the clinical psychology brings to the family courts. And this is the structure that the family court needs. It needs balance, it's fair, so we get 2 second opinions and we get an accurate diagnosis for the court. And then we just move it into treatment. We got second opinions on the treatment as well for very difficult family situations. So with that, I'm headed off to my Sunday, and we'll talk to you about some other aspect of the family courts next week. So we'll talk with everybody a little later.